How close are we really to getting to this technology, the technology that Ender was using? Okay. Did you see the movie? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think we're a long way away from what we saw in the movie for sure, but think that the intent is there. I think there's definite interest from a military perspective to minimize our own losses by engaging with drones to some degree. And so I think conceptually, that's the direction we're probably headed. But in terms of the stuff I saw in that movie, wow, I think we're a long way away from that, for sure. But, conceptually, I think we're probably headed in that direction.
I would agree. A lot of what is displayed is really cool looking stuff, and I like it all, but it's not going to be available to me just yet. But there's one thing, especially in the book, that is crucial to what Ender is able to do that is, at least as far as we understand physics, going to be beyond us at all times, and that's the Ansible. Remember, this is the thing that allows Ender to control the drones at a distance of stellar capacity, right? So right now, when you send a message from Earth to Mars, it takes 6 minutes for NASA to communicate to Curiosity and Spirit, and 6 minutes for Curiosity and Spirit to send telemetry back to NASA. When you expand that to interstellar distances, it will take centuries for it to go from a base in the, in our solar system to another star system. Meaning that Ender could never control the aircraft or the spaceships at that kind of distance. So, Orson Scott Card gives us this Ansible, which is a way of doing what's called superluminary communication, faster than light communication. But we're limited by the speed of light. And so a lot of what happens in the novel, in the big battle, seems, physicists tell us, to be beyond any capability of any technology, because the speed of light is a certain limit on what is feasible and what is capable. So that is a, sort of restriction on, how cool this stuff can become, unfortunately.
It's an interesting point. I had forgotten about that aspect of it. Other questions or other thoughts that you would like us to explore a little deeper? Yeah.
For the two military judges, can you just talk a little bit about reality and what types of career opportunities would be available to students in your, what you do in relation to technology?
Did you hear the question? The question is, what would you do, or what are some of the career opportunities for someone who might be considering going into this particular field or this particular element within the military?
Right, well I can tell you that one thing the Army is looking for right now is we want to increase the number of STEM background, officers with a STEM background. So we're specifically looking for people with those types of degrees, and so that's where the scholarship money is right now and those kind of things. So I would say that if you have an interest in science and technology, there's definitely a place for you in the military. And there are a couple of things you could do in the military. You could go into research, where you're researching the types of technology that we're going to use in the future. But mostly, I think that you would initially start off as a leader, because really we're looking for leadership at this initial level, and then you could specialize into some type of science or technology field where you would be developing things that we're talking about. I know recently we've been working on a robotic pack mule. If you get on YouTube and search "Big Dog Robot," that's an Army project where we're trying to build this thing that will carry heavy loads for us over uneven terrain, and so that would minimize the impact on soldiers and allow them to cover ground a little bit more quickly. But that's the kind of thing that if you were going to be a scientist and help the military, that will be a field to go into.
All right, for the unmanned aircraft field, I actually just recently applied to a civilian contractor job, which you will spend a lot of time overseas as a contractor, but the money is well into the 6 figures. I got offered about $150,000 a year, but I don't really feel like spending the rest of my life in Afghanistan every year because I have a family to think of. But if you're the type of person that can handle being away from home for extended periods of time. There's a lot of money out there in the unmanned aircraft field. And there's even the people that actually make our aircraft. It's called AAI. There's jobs within the continental U.S. that you can do, which range from about $50,000 to $80,000 to $90,000 a year starting out. So the money is definitely there, and it's just going to get better because eventually the police, law enforcement is going to start getting unmanned aircraft. It's just a matter of time. All these groups are going to keep fighting and fighting, but we're winning this battle because we save lives and we protect people. That's all that these unmanned aircrafts do within the continental U.S. because we aren't allowed to fire any sort of armament within Illinois or the United States. Most of the aircraft that the law enforcement will have will be like the one we have out in the auditorium, which is a Shadow, or the Raven, which is maybe, 6 to 8 pounds? Yeah, it's about 6 to 8 pounds. You actually launch it with your hand. So there's a lot of money out there, so if you want to actually get into the military and become a UAV operator, a lot of the contractors are actually looking for military experience.
Can you just say what type of education and background you need to get into what you're talking about, Steve?
Really, all you need is your high school diploma or a GED, because you have to get into the military. You have to have that, but your ASVAB score has to be at least, I believe your GT scores for your ASVAB have to be above 120, which if you were to talk to your recruiter, he can help you out with that, and you can take the ASVAB as many times as you want. If, say you don't get high enough the first time, you can practice it and take it again until you get it. So you literally have unlimited tries if you really want to get into this field. And right now there's only actually one UAV platoon in the entire state of Illinois, so you're going to wind up in my unit in Peoria.
I would suggest that probably also a lot of science and math, particularly physics probably in particular, but also engineering, those kinds of fields where there's a lot of science, a lot of math, would probably be educationally where you want to be, and certainly the more you get in high school, the better off you'll be when you move along the channel. Any other questions from the audience?
Right now, you're 18, being in the Army, correct?
Is there an age restriction in the Army?
You have to be at least 17 with your parents' permission, and then 18 without your parents' permission.
Right, so is it possible as we get further that, like, in the book, you could start training 6-year-olds?
Good question. Right now, we have no intention of doing that. No, absolutely not. I will tell you though that, back in the book, some of the things they're probably looking for in kids like Ender are intellectual capacity and problem-solving skills and competitiveness. Those are all things that we kind of develop as we grow. So, yeah, when you're 6 years old, those attributes are being grown within you. But we don't really start assessing candidates until you're about 17 or 18. Because like if a candidate comes to me and wants to be an Army officer, the first thing I'm going to look at is their GPA in high school and their ACT score. And then look at some of the other things like, were they an athlete? Did they participate in any sports? Did they have any leadership positions in school? And those kind of things. So no, not looking at any 6-year-olds, but that is probably when those attributes that we are going to be looking for are being developed.
If I can add just a little bit to that, and this comes more from what critics of video games are writing currently. And one of the arguments is that things like Battlefield 4 and all these other first-person shooter games are actually training 6-year-olds to be ready for evaluation as 18-year-olds. And this is a criticism of the violence in the video games mainly. But there's a number of people who've written fairly extensively that we are creating a generation of kids who will be ready for militarization, because at ages 5 and 6 and 7, they're already playing military games on their game consoles. So that's just another way of answering the question, but it's looking at it from the perspective of game studies and what people are talking about with regards to video games that are designed currently.
Other thoughts or questions from the audience? Okay, well, I was going to ask each of our panelists to, if they had a final word or a final thought that they wanted to offer to you in terms of not only the book, but also how it might relate to young people like yourselves who are moving your way through school. I think you're all in high school at this point. So working your way through school and sort of how do you create your aspirations?
I would say that, first of all, when you read the book, and as you look at other books that you're probably going to read while you're in high school, is to think about them critically. There are so many aspects to this book that you can think about and possibly use it to shape how you view the world. One of the things that I like about this book is that it has a moral implication. It's not just about winning or Ender itself, but there are some real big moral questions at the end, like, was it right to destroy the bugger world? Did we have a right to do that? So I'd ask you, I'd just give you some advice that as you read books and go through your studies, to be critical. Think about those kind of things and think about what you could glean from them to apply to your perspective, your life outlook.
I would just build on what he just said to look at that from a personalization standpoint as well. That idea of where's our own moral compass at when we are a target of a bully. I like what the book talks about too in terms of the power of discipline in our own lives. And discipline is an important concept. It helps keep us on target or in our journey. It helps provide a direction for us. But what I always found interesting was how much Ender despised that part of himself. That when he becomes the commander, he turns around and treats his platoon or battalion or whatever it was called the same way he had been treated, which he despised. And what does being disciplined mean, and having discipline in our own lives, and to challenge how we respond to the moral questions that we're faced with as young people growing up and eventually as we become adults.
Oh, I'm going to say this, and your teachers are going to hate me for saying it. But I think one of the lessons of the book that I take away is you've got to be critical of your own education. You can't just swallow what you're told and expect it to be absolutely beyond question. I mean, part of what happens in the book is Ender is being told to do these things by these adults who are supposedly well-meaning, and his teachers and his commanders and things, but they lead him into a kind of trickery at a certain point in the novel. And if our education is going to be more than trickery, we have to take responsibility for it as students. We can't just expect to sit there passively and absorb whatever we're given, but we have to be active participants in creating our own education, questioning where we get the information, who gives it to us, why they give it to us, and what it all means. And this means a very engaged, critical kind of mode of thinking about your education, but it's one that we have to take the responsibility for as students.
Okay, well, I just wanted to thank our panel. They're very interesting people and they have very interesting perspectives, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I understand you've had quite an eventful day, and hopefully you've gained some insights and some knowledge in terms of those STEM elements that are part of the book, but also kind of looking at the book and how it can fit into helping you think about where you want to be and what kinds of things you want to be doing. So thank you again for all being here, and I thank the panel again.